6:32 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of the Forney ISD Board of Trustees to order. We do have a quorum present, and the meeting has been posted in the matters prescribed by law. At this time, I'd like to recognize our pianist this month, Miss Jane Salgado. She's a fifth grade student at Johnson Elementary, and her parents are Sarah and Richard Salgado. So let's give our pianist another round of applause. Great job, Ms. Salgado. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We appreciate that. It's beautiful. Moving on, we'll do our pledges first and then our invocation, but at first I'd like to introduce our students of the month. Once they are introduced, we'll rise and they'll lead us in our pledges, and then Mr. Greg Ferris, our Vice President, our invocation. This time the chair recognized Dr. Pamela Luttrell. She's a Brown Middle School principal, and she'll introduce our secondary student of the month. And then behind her will be Miss Rachel Bonner, Criswell Elementary School principal, who will introduce her elementary student of the month. All right. Miss Luttrell, Dr. Luttrell.
Good evening. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Pardon Mangri-Rowe. He is a 7th grader at Brown Middle School. He has two siblings currently at North Forney High School and a sibling who graduated from North Forney. He's taking advanced social studies, advanced science, and advanced math. And he's a strong academic student, but I want to read you what one of his teachers wrote about him. Pardon is one of my students that I've had the pleasure of having this year at Brown Middle School. Pardon exhibits outstanding character for a young man of his age. Anytime he has any trouble in class, he doesn't give up and he works to improve himself in every way possible. But more so than grades, he exhibits great character by the way he presents himself socially. He's one of the most respectable kids I've met in my time teaching. And as a student, I have seen him go out of his way to make sure others feel comfortable in the classroom, specifically with an ELL student by bringing him into and making him feel welcome in his table group. Pardon is a student that I'm happy to have at Brown Middle School and is a great example of what Forney ISD is. So, Pardon Mangri-Rowe.
Good evening. It is my honor to present to you this evening Ellen Van Canegum. Ellen is a 6th grader at Criswell, and she's 11 years old. She lives with her dad, her stepmom, and her 2 older brothers. Ellen is a member of the student council at Criswell and a member of the 6th grade leadership team. Her favorite subject at school is science. Outside of school, she enjoys playing soccer, playing outside, drawing, and swimming. When she grows up, she wants to be a professional soccer player. Her 6th grade teachers say that Ellen is a positive, helpful, and full of energy. They also report that she enthusiastically participates in class discussions and activities. She takes pride in her work, and her peers view her as being honest and trusting. She is a student that anyone can work with, and it is apparent that her peers are respectful of her. Ellen is a student that exemplifies all the characteristics that make her an exemplary student at Criswell. She has a bright future, and we are blessed that she's been part of the Criswell family.
If you'll please rise this time. Mr. Ferris will lead our invocation, and these students are pledges.
Thank you. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We have to come together and serve our community. Thank you for these students and families represented and for the great things they've accomplished this year, and pray that you'll continue to give them opportunities as they go out throughout the school year. We thank you for all our teachers and administrators represented tonight, and pray that you will give them strength for their week ahead. In Christ's name we ask, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one indivisible.
Once again, please join me in giving a round of applause to these students of the month. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight, and I hope that you find our meeting insightful and the information you hear tonight that you'll take on to the rest of our stakeholders. Moving on to item 5 is recognition and acceptance of donations. At this time, the chair would recognize Dr. Justin Terry. Dr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. We love this part of the agenda for sure. This is the opportunity for us to come to you with donations to our school district of over $5,000 as our policy states. Those do have to be accepted by our board. Tonight we are bringing you 2 separate donations. First off, from our Forney High School Band Booster Club, a donation in the amount of $6,740 to the Forney ISD Fine Arts Activity Account. And really excited to present that to you tonight, as well as from Johnson Elementary School, part of their a collective fundraiser with their PTO and the school itself, a booster-thon fundraiser, and the school's portion that is being donated tonight from the PTO was $13,398.15 to be used for our students this year at Johnson Elementary. So I'm very excited to bring to you and propose that you accept both donations, and we'd also like to invite up after the vote any representatives to take pictures with Mr. Coker.
Yes, Mr. Bell, I'd like to ask the board to accept these donations as presented.
We have a recommendation. The administration accept the donations. Any discussion? Hearing none, at this time, Chair to entertain a motion. So moved. Motion, Mr. Andrews. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Regan. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Well, let's give a round of applause. Certainly, $20,000 worth of donations tonight. That is an outstanding effort, and we certainly appreciate that. I know that the Forney High School Band, as well as the Johnson Elementary School, will certainly appreciate these funds. But for an elementary school to raise $13,000, that is a significant amount of money. And let's give them this PTO a round of applause for their effort. Anyone here representing them tonight?
Yes, Mr. Whiffen and also Mr. Luna, if you guys wouldn't mind coming up to represent Forney High School. And Ms. McElroy, and you have a guest with you as well. Would you like to introduce your guest? Wonderful. Great. And Mr. Bell, just to clarify, that was the portion of the fundraiser that went to the school, that $13,000. That's a lot of booster thawing. That's right.
We'll get everybody behind you, right there. That was everybody. Not as come forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Moving on to item 6 is teacher recognition. Item A is recognize the Criswell Elementary teacher Jennifer Zuna for receiving the CELD Outstanding Teacher of the Year Award for the Texas Council for Learning Disabilities State Chapter. At this time, the chair would recognize Ms. Suzanne McWilliams, our Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I wanted to take the liberty of recognizing Jennifer Ozuna tonight because I love her. She's an awesome teacher. And I wanted to just tell you a little bit about her and her recognition. I wrote her a letter congratulating her for being selected to receive the 2017 Council for Learning Disabilities Texas Teacher of the Year Award. This is actually a national organization, and Jennifer was awarded the Texas selection on that. I wrote her in her letter and I said, "This is an extraordinary honor and it speaks volumes of your dedication and servant heart in education." And she truly does have a servant heart. Our students are extremely fortunate to have a teacher who loves and cares for them the way you do. I've had the privilege of watching you work, and I never cease to be amazed by the level of performance from the students under your care. Your principal, Mrs. Bonner, tells me that you are one of the very best special education teachers she has ever seen, and I couldn't agree with her more. You carefully tend to the whole child, ensuring their academic as well as their social and emotional needs are being met. I love that you start with your students' strengths and you use that to build up any weakness. You look beyond the disability and ensure that the students and their parents know how talented they are and what abilities they have to succeed. Not only are you gifted at building relationships with your students, you are beautifully skilled at building relationships with their parents as well. Mrs. Bonner tells me that you are a true leader amongst your peers on the Criswell campus. She states, "Jennifer is a wonderful teacher leader on campus. Our staff knows she is always willing to share a strategy or advice, and she does it in a non-threatening manner. She is a coach and has great follow-up with others when helping them. She is also a mentor to new teachers. She always volunteers to serve on committees or add input when asked. She is a solution-oriented and never gives up on a child. She continually seeks new strategies, tools, or research to hone her skills in order to help a child grow and be successful. Your passion for educating students with special needs grows in everything you do. When Mrs. Bonner and I enter your room, we feel there is almost a magical quality when watching you work with your students. It's obvious how much you love your students and enjoy teaching. You have consistently demonstrated that high expectations bring high performance, and you truly deserve the recognition and the accolades for your excellence, enthusiasm, and dedication to your students, as well as to the teaching profession. You consistently demonstrate the Forney ISD vision of inspiring students through innovative education. And we could not be more proud or feel more blessed to be your colleagues and have you serving the special needs of the students in our district. Thank you for all that you do, and congratulations once again on this outstanding recognition. Board, I want you to also know that she received that honor, and I thought, well, I'm going to go and watch her get that. And then I found out it was all the way in Baltimore that she was being recognized. They flew her up there for the recognition. And if ever you're down and you wonder why it is that you're an educator or why it is you serve on this board, go spend a day in her room, and it makes it all worthwhile. She's a phenomenal teacher. So we love you and appreciate you. Thank you.
Congratulations again. Moving on to item 7, student recognition. Item A is recognize our high school national merit scholar students. This time the chair would recognize Ms. Judy Weber, our chief learning officer, to introduce these students and their principals. Ms. Weber.
I'm excited that we have 3 students to honor this evening. National Merit Scholarship Program is an academic competition for the recognition and scholarships that began in 1955. High school students enter the National Merit Program by taking the preliminary SAT, the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Of the 1.6 million entrants, approximately 50,000 or 3% of the highest PSAT scores qualify for the recognition in the National Merit Scholarship Program. In September, these high scores were notified through their schools that they have qualified as either a commended or a semifinalist. In late September, more than 2/3 of the high scores received letters of commendation in recognition of their outstanding academic promise. Forney ISD is proud to recognize Lilia Harlan as a National Merit Commended Scholar representing Forney High School. Forney ISD is also proud to recognize Khalid Dorsey as a National Merit Commended Scholar representing North Forney High School. In addition, every year the National Hispanic Recognition Program recognizes about 5,000 of the 250,000 Hispanic Latino juniors who take the PSAT. Forney ISD is proud to recognize Jesus Pena as a National Merit Hispanic Commended Scholar representing North Forney High School. I'd like to ask their families and administrators to come up and be recognized with them.
I'm going to take the liberty to date myself, but I've been on this board a long time, 20 years, and I was on this board when we had the first ever National Merit Scholar, and that hasn't been but about 15 years ago. So it's just incredible that for us as a district, you know, not only our administrative teams, but our educators, to get to a place to where we're turning out multiple National Merit Scholars on an annual basis, and that's also part and parcel with the parenting. And it takes a huge commitment by the parents and these kiddos to do the work and put the effort in to be a National Merit Scholar. So I commend you for your efforts. We are proud of you as trustees. Way to represent Forney ISD. We appreciate that. Thank you. At this time, we're going to call a recess. It's 6:52 p.m., and we're going to recess here for about 5 minutes. Thank you. Moving on to item 8, audience participation. There was no one that asked to speak to the board tonight. We'll move on to item 9, reports. Item 8 is a monthly financial report, and this time the chair would recognize Mr. John Chase, our CFO. Mr. Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Your monthly financial report for September 2017 has $9.5 million of revenue recognized for the month and $8.1 million of expenditures. Year-to-date revenue recognized was $10,400,000, or approximately 13% of the amount estimated. Total expenditures was $18.1 million, or 23% of the amount appropriated. Now, just for comparative data, we had 12%, I think it's the same point in time last year, revenue recognized, and 22% of the amount expended. So we're pretty well on target for our expenditures in the general fund and revenue recognized. Moving on to debt service, we had $16,000 of revenue for the month, and we had $500 of expenditures. Not much there, just that's what paying agent fees. As you know, there's only really 2 times a year that we have large cash outflows in this fund. Year-to-date revenue recognized was $150,000, or 1% of the amount estimated. Year-to-date expenditures was $12.4 million, or 71% of the amount estimated. And then finally, for the cash and investment balance as of September 30th, with general fund, food service, debt service, and capital projects combined, we had right at $26 million of cash investments on hand. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions concerning the monthly financial report? Thank you, Mr. Chase. Moving on to item 9B is quarterly investment report. Chair would recognize Mr. John Chase, our CFO.
Again, the investment report, we had just $26.9 million of cash and investments on hand as of September 30, 2017. Those cash was invested either in Citibank or on deposit at Citibank, or invested in one of 3 authorized investment pools. The interest rates range from 0.85% that we got on demand deposit in Citibank to as high as almost 3% in one of our investment pools. The total interest earned for the quarter was just a little over $85,000. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but a couple years ago at this same point in time, we were talking about getting about $13,000 in interest income. So I mean, it's still 6 times higher. Still not a lot, but it's definitely the interest rates are up more than they were in prior years. And that concludes the investment report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions concerning the quarterly investment report? Thank you, Mr. Chase. Moving on to item C is the first quarter tax collection report. Once again, recognize Mr. John Chase, our CFO.
So for the tax collection report for the quarter ended September 30, I think it was in your board packet on page 12. Just to start off with, our total tax levy for the year is, and this includes both the general fund and the debt service fund, it was $54.7 million. And this is about a 15.7% increase over the prior year. As you'll remember, during our budget process, we were estimating that our tax collections would go up about 15%, and that's pretty well where we're at, 15.7%. No surprise that we have no current tax collections. The tax levy, the bills don't go out until October 1st, and so there would be no collections as of September 30th. For delinquent taxes, we collected $356,000 and change, and that's about 0.65% of the current levy, which in the prior years we did about the same amount. As far as the average is about 0.7% of the current levy, so pretty well right on target with delinquent tax collections. And then just finally, we had a $17,000, almost $18,000 reduction in our tax levy based on adjustments that get posted, and those would be things like late homestead exemptions or over 65 exemptions, things like that would get filed. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions concerning the first quarter tax collection report? All right. Thank you, Mr. Chase. Moving on to item D is a future-ready curriculum update. This time the chair would recognize Dr. Justin Terry, our Deputy Superintendent. Dr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Board, Ms. McWilliams, I'm really excited to come to you tonight to talk a little bit about our future-ready curriculum. And I'd like to invite up my wonderful co-presenters tonight. Ms. Stormy Lamond is our Director of Future Ready Curriculum and Technology, and one of our Synergy students, Ms. Katie Williams, is going to talk to you a little bit tonight as well. But just the picture you see on the screen here is if you'll recall, is kind of the direction we're moving in Forney ISD with our curriculum, learning, and assessment. And tonight I do want to focus on the development of our curriculum and kind of the next stage of development with our curriculum. And as you recall, this right here is kind of the future-ready standards that we are beginning to implement. Some of those soft skills that we've heard from our community and business partners, research would support as well, but moving beyond just the standard content curriculum that we have implemented and focused on in the past. To help implement those, We also want to ensure that the things that we are writing for our teachers and our staff are also aligned to our instructional beliefs. And these instructional beliefs are really about getting things into the long-term memory. And so when we look at things like future-ready standards that we develop from our community feedback, when we look at things like instructional beliefs that are developed from our teachers, and then we also have to create something that is aligned to the state of Texas standards, it is becoming more and more and more and more and more difficult to find alignment for these innovative and unique things that we're doing here in Forney ISD. And so when we look out at textbook companies, or we look out at different resources that we can find online, the challenge many times that we find is they really don't align to the things that we're trying to teach and the way we're trying to teach them. And so we have embarked on probably, well, I can tell you right now, the first and one and only process of curriculum development that is really a triangulated process that involves student voice in the development. And I can't tell you how excited I am about the progress that we are already making. And so I've invited up tonight just to give you a little bit of update on what this looks like and kind of where we're headed over the next few years in this development, and already our first results. And I think you'll be really excited to see them. So I'm going to invite Ms. Lamond up to talk to you a little bit about our development process and introduce to you also our wonderful Synergy student participant. We call her our employee up here because they're working pretty hard. So, Storm.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. So I just want to share with you a little bit about the curriculum writing process. So we have curriculum writers that work with the learning specialists to develop that curriculum, but the students play an active role in that. Sometimes it's in giving feedback, and sometimes it's in actually doing the lesson to determine if the level is appropriate for students or not. And so that's just it's been a great process to include student voice through that. And then the learning specialist works with the teacher to implement that. And then finally, after that lesson has been implemented, we collect that teacher feedback in a qualitative form to see how we might need to make adjustments. And then we also look at feedback in a quantitative form based on student data and how they do. And so this is just a huge revolving process so that these lessons are vetted and aligned to the depth and complexity of the state standards and then the Forney Future Ready standards as well. So to try to explain that in more detail, we wanted to invite Katie Williams, who is serving currently as one of our curriculum writers for English. She's also worked in math a little bit too, but I just wanted her to share with you some of her experiences and how this program has impacted her.
Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm a senior at Forney High School. One of the first projects that we were given here at admin was a 6th grade math lesson, and we got to, some of us got to play the role of the teacher, and we looked over the lesson plan just as the teacher would and made sure that, if we couldn't understand it, then we wanted to make sure that the curriculum writers could go back and edit it and make it more efficient for the teacher. And then the other half of us got to play the role of a student, and we got to participate in the lesson, and we kind of got to give them the feedback that this was boring or we thought this was super fun. And just so that, because some of the things that as teachers it's really hard to know if it's going to be fun for your students or not. So it's really exciting as a Synergy student to be able to give that input back to them. And being a senior, this is my last year at Forney, so I think it's really interesting that they're bringing student perspective into the writing process, and I'm super excited to see where this program goes. Thank you.
One of my favorite comments from Katie after she got to be a part of one of our activities, she said, "You can't put 5 students in a group. So-and-so was totally able to hide. They did not learn anything. So you need to knock that down to 3 students in a group." And so it's just been really helpful to have that type of feedback right there on hand as we're designing lessons. So next I want to share with you some of the results. We have put an 8th grade math lesson into a classroom, and we're able to compare the learning check from last year that is in blue with the learning check from this year, which is in red. And if you look at that, on the left side you do have Brown, and on the right side you do have Warren. And I think the biggest thing there is the gains that you see there between the blue and the red. But if you compare the campuses, I think the other thing you're going to see is that we are closing that gap, and we are becoming more equitable in our curriculum delivery through this process. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stormy. Again, you can see what the data looks like here. We're really excited about the first lesson, and we see great things to come. Obviously, there's going to be some pitfalls along the way, but we feel that the feedback process is going to make these things great. And as you can see, long-term memory penetration is occurring. Really excited about the team that we have working on this, from our curriculum writers to our learning specialists, and especially our Synergy students. And in the back, I also wanted to recognize Miss Melanie Miller. She is our teacher for our Synergy team. And just wave, Melanie. And she's incredible. She does our education and training, and just a great partner from a teacher's perspective as well in the design process. So happy to open up questions to the board that you may have about the process or where we're headed with our curriculum development.
Dr. Terry, how many of these Synergy students do you have in your employ?
We have employed, sir, wait till you hear this statistic. We have employed 42 Synergy students between our programs for the low cost of $0.
Gotcha. Well, I was certainly impressed. I mean, as a senior in high school, to be able to stand in front of all these folks and lay that out, I thought you did a really outstanding job. So you are to be commended. So the other side of that coin is she's only 4 years away from coming back and being an educator, educating those 6th graders. So
right.
It's not that big of a stretch.
That's right.
So, but anyway, it's.
I was recruiting before we started.
How long will it take you to get completely through this project to get your curriculum ready?
The process itself is pretty extensive because we want to ensure that when we roll things out, they are fully vetted and the data is there to support them. Right now, we are developing. I think 6 grade levels, correct me if I'm wrong, Stormy, is our plan by the end of the school year in multiple subjects. And so it's going to be a multi-year development, but our goal is to have a fully vetted 170 days worth of instructional resources for our teachers to have in the classroom with our kids that are most importantly aligned to our belief system and our standards and our instructional strategies that we like to use here in Forney.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Terry. Appreciate you, Stormy. Thank you. Moving on to item E is the master planning update demographic report. This time, the chair would recognize Dr. Justin Terry, our deputy superintendent. Dr. Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Tonight, I'm coming to you guys to give our monthly master planning update. If you'll look at our calendar for the fall, as you can see, tonight is a focus on our demographers fall report. And we do have with us tonight the president of Templeton Demographics, Mr. Bob Templeton, to present to you a lot of numbers and a lot of growth in Forney ISD. And so we're excited to welcome him to talk through the demographic update, and then I'll share a little bit more about some of the progress we're making on conversion into our intermediates when he is finished. Let me see if I can pull you up here, Bob. There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Terry, Board President Bell, Superintendent McWilliams, board members. It is my pleasure to be here with you this evening. Tonight, I will briefly touch on the economic conditions that we're seeing across the DFW area. Then I'll spend a good bit of time talking about the housing market, and then we'll share our latest enrollment projections. Well, we continue to be very fortunate in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We are experiencing some of the strongest job growth in the country. So despite a little bit of a slowdown with the state of Texas economy, the DFW region remains one of the top 2 to 3 cities in the country for job growth. In fact, the DFW job growth is right at 3.1%. You can see that's about twice the percentage rate of job growth that we're experiencing across the country. So even with the slowdown in energy that we saw in the Houston area, the DFW region is being powered by professional services, trade, logistics, And so the information services areas, the financial, professional service industries are doing very well across the DFW region, and we are still in our infancy in job growth. So I don't see anything related to a slowdown in job growth over the next 1 to 2 years that could change the outlook for the DFW region related to job growth. Unemployment rates, the U.S. rate's at about 4.5%. Keep in mind, it wasn't that long ago, 4 to 5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, we were at about 9%. So we've seen across the country an improvement in job growth. Texas is right at 4.5%. That raise across Texas is related to energy. DFW region's at 3.9 and Kaufman County is at 3.8. So you can see the unemployment rates in the DFW region are very healthy. Now the housing market is continuing to expand. We've seen an increase in the annual start rate across the DFW region. The annual new home start rate is right at 31,254. That's an increase of almost 1,700 starts from the second quarter of 2016. Now keep in mind, I'm sure you're remembering the previous boom that we had in the DFW region, the housing surge in 2004 and 5. Back during that period in DFW, we were building about 50,000 homes a year. So we still haven't quite got to that level of home construction that we saw back in 2005. It is estimated that we could see a little bit more growth in the annual rate. It's not likely to get back to 50,000, but it could get back up to about 35,000, 36,000, could be the peak for new home construction. We have seen an increase in the Forney area's new home construction. Now I wanted to touch on some of the retail growth that you're experiencing in the Forney area. Now that first one, the Crossroads at Terrell, I do understand it's not in the Forney School District, but we just wanted to reference that just to give you that sense of growth that is occurring along Highway 80 and Interstate 20. And so you can see there's a significant amount of retail commercial growth that is happening at the doorstep of Forney. And when we look at the Gateway Forney, it's about a 2,000-acre mixed-use development that is located in the Forney School District. So we've got also strong commercial retail growth that is taking place in the Forney School District. We track the housing based on two sets of data. So one source of data is the deed transactions. So we are able to get a deed transaction report for the Forney School District. We get this every month, and it is a source of data that we use to help us with the velocity, but it's also allowing us to look at existing homes that are for sale. So roughly through August, we had about 1,480 home sales through 2017. That was about August of 2017, and about 36% of that activity is for new homes. What we're also seeing is your average price, sale price for a new home has gone up to over $280,000. So our seeing continued growth in the values of the existing homes and the new homes. The average sale price for an existing home is up to over $266,000. Here's a graph just to give you an indication. Since 2010, what we've seen in home values, this is unprecedented home value growth that we've seen in the last 7 years. Back in 2010, average new home sale price was $189,000, and as I mentioned, now it's about $281,000. The existing sales price back in 2010 was $182,000, and now it's about $266,000. So we've seen roughly a 43% increase in the new home value and about a 46% increase in the existing home sale value. In terms of new home construction, this is the annual ranking report based on annual closings for school districts in the DFW region. Right now, Forney is ranked 15th in the DFW area. The annual closing rate was right at 654. We have 1,501 vacant developed lots that are ready for builders to build on today. We have 18,843 future lots. So that just gives us an idea of the lots that are coming to the Forney School District. The VDL are on the ground today, so we know that you've got room for about 800 or so homes per year. That VDL is kind of a gauge that we can use. We'd like to have about 2 years supply of vacant developed lots. And right now you can see at that 650 to 800 starts, that's about a 2-year supply. We do expect you're going to go up this list. So you're going to climb up this list over the next couple of quarters as some of these districts start to move down the list. Here's a graph of the starts and closings by quarter. And you can kind of see the transition that's happened, the growth in starts. Back in 2012, we started about 316. And then in 2015, we had started 425. In 2016, we'd started 692. Now, I want to point out, when we did our projections last year, that was about this time, if we look back at that 2016, you can see we were starting less than about 300 homes in the first and second quarter. So since that time, we've seen over 200 starts in the third quarter of 16, 205 starts in the fourth quarter of 16. You can see, you can get the picture now. We're maintaining about a 200 start per quarter starts. So it does look like now that we're headed to about 800 homes annually in 2017. Here's a thematic map based on the elementary attendance zones. It's also looking at all of the annual closings in the district. We've mapped, those blue circles are your top 10. So a majority of your activity can be found in these top 10. The red elementary zone has more than 150 annual closings. Those orange zones have between 51 and 150 annual closings, and the yellow have less than 50. So you can see that Smith zone is your most active elementary zone. It's basically being driven by those two developments, those large developments of Windmill Farms and Devonshire. And then you've got Crosby, Lewis, Johnson. They're in that orange category that are in the annual closing range of 51 to 150. Here's the map of vacant developed lots. So this gives us an idea of where we have the most vacant developed lots that are on the ground. Of course, your number one community subdivision for the most vacant developed lots is Gateway Parks Additions. Of course, it's just getting started. 378 vacant developed lots. Those red zones have more than 300 vacant developed lots. And we've got Henderson and Lewis. Now you'll notice that the Smith and Blackburn zones are yellow, so they've got less than 100, but we do have some developments, both those Windmill Farms and Devonshire are going to be delivering lots shortly that's going to then allow them to keep going at a very strong rate in the near term. Here's a map based on the future lots. So the red elementary zones have more than 3,000 future lots, and the orange have between 1,000 and 3,000, and the yellow have less than 1,000. So you kind of get the picture here. Your growth is spread out across the district. It's not concentrated in a couple of zones. It's spread out in multiple elementary zones. This next slide really tells that story. This is the green are active subdivisions that are building. Those yellow are the futures. As I mentioned earlier, we've got about 1,500 vacant developed lots ready for builders to build on. There's more than 230 homes that are currently under construction in the district, and we've got about 18,850 futures that are located in some of those green and those yellow outline subdivisions. Here's all of the new home data based on the elementary attendance zones, and you can see the Smith Elementary Zone is your number one most active with 235 annual starts. The second most active is Johnson with 169, and then Lewis has 135, but I'd also point out Crosby has 125 annual starts. So you've got 4 elementary zones that are starting over 100 homes annually. And then we'll look down at the vacant developed lots. So we use that to help us with the forecast at those elementary schools in the next couple of years, because that's where the lots are. Of course, Henderson has the highest amount of vacant developed lots with 444. So we could see a surge in activity in Henderson. So Henderson's likely going to be up over 100 starts within this next year. And then the second most active for vacant developed lots is Lewis with 342. And then you've got Crosby with 272. But keep in mind, and I'm going to show you in a few slides coming in just a little bit, that Smith zone is going to be adding lots within the next couple of months. Here's some of the details about some of these active neighborhoods. This is the Lewis Elementary Zone with Travis Ranch, very large. Of course, it's been building for a while. There were about, they're building about 80 to 100 homes per year. Presently, we're getting about 0.72 students per house. That price range is $168,000 to $259,000. And then we've also got Clements Ranch. So Clements Ranch is new. It's 790 total lots. Phase 1 with 161 lots delivered, and they are starting homes. There were 49 starts in 2017. First closings are underway. Presently, there's about 11 students that are residing in the Clements Ranch development. This is Devonshire. Now, Devonshire is split between two elementary zones. The Smith portion of Devonshire has about 2,013 lots. There were 58 homes under construction, building about 120 homes per year. That current yield is 0.88 students per house. The Crosby portion of Devonshire, they've got about 25 homes under construction, and they're also building about 100 to 120 homes per year. That yield is presently about 0.66 students per house. I do expect that yield to probably catch up and get pretty close to the yield that we're seeing in the Smith portion as well. Windmill Farms, of course, Windmill Farms has been building for a long time. It's a total of about 7,000 total lots. As I mentioned, they were running out of lots, but there are some phases that will be delivered shortly. And so they've got several phases in the development stage in both the Smith and the Blackburn zone. You can see that 3B should be 3B is 175 lots. The groundwork is underway. Should see homes starting next summer. And then you've got phases 4A and 4B. Those should be delivering as well. The approval was in August of 2017. First home starting late 2018. And then phase 5A has 151 lots. The groundwork is underway. Should see home starts in phase 5A in the first quarter of 2018. So as I mentioned, both the Smith and Blackburn zones, the VDL is going to get corrected within the next few months. Vintage Meadows, it's down in the Johnson Elementary Zone, just off of Interstate 20, 374 total lots. There were about 68 homes that are occupied. They are delivering phase 1 and phase 2B. It's delivered in home building, and the current yield out there is 0.88 students per house. Gateway Parks, it's a mixed-use development, about 1,864 total lots. There were 61 homes under construction, building about 75 to 80 homes in 2017, and it could get up to 150 homes starting in 2018, and that's in the Henderson Elementary Attendance Zone. Forney Ranch, it's a...
Back up right quick.
Yes.
What's the, 1.5 is the homes? Let's see. Has it got an average of what the utilization rate is in there?
The yield?
Yes.
I do not have a yield because I believe it's so new that we don't have a yield yet.
Okay.
I suspect, though, it would likely yield in that 0.8 range as well.
Thank you.
Forney Ranch is a brand-new development. The preliminary plat for phase 1 approved in July for 545 lots. So it'll likely take them about a year to get the infrastructure and the development in place. So they could start to see some home building in the 2018 year, latter part of 2018. Overland Grove, this is another new development, 900 future lots. It is currently in the annexation zoning process. The developer anticipates groundwork could start in the second quarter of 2018. First homes anticipated late 2018. That price range is $275,000 to $400,000, and that's in the Johnson Elementary Attendance Zone. Here's some multifamily developments that we're watching. There's a potential of about 2,000 multifamily units in the Gateway project. Gateway Cedars has 334 market rate units. It's fully leased. It's currently yielding about 0.17 students per unit. Gateway Oaks, 313 market rate units. It's fully leased and has a yield of about 0.1. Gateway Pines, it's under construction for about 337 market rate units. First units could be available by October of 18, with the total construction complete by the mid-2019. And that's pretty normal yields for market rate apartments. Sometimes it could get close to 0.2, but typically the rent rates are such that it's more than likely kids with, or families with preschool kids or no kids, just due to the lifestyle of living in these apartment units. There is a development, a multifamily development near Windmill Farms, just off of Highway 80. It's the park at Windmill Farms, 272 future units. The site plan was approved in September. Groundwork expected to begin in the third quarter of 2018, with first units available in the third quarter of 2019. We're also expecting this to be a market rate type development that would have a low yield of less than 0.2 students per unit. It's the tax credited apartment complexes, and you will be notified if there is an approval for a tax credit apartment complex. Those tax credited or subsidized apartment complexes can yield as high as 0.8 to 1 student per unit. So those are the ones that we are watching for the closest, because it can have a huge impact in a very short period of time. Now here's the look at the enrollment projections. This is the grade level projections, and what you'll notice is this past October our enrollment was about 10,202 students. We had very strong growth of almost 500 students this year, which was about a 5.1% growth. The yellow is the largest grade per year. The green is the second largest grade per year. So you can see we're a little bit larger in those secondary grades than we are in those elementary grades. That's primarily because we've seen a little bit of a slowdown in birth rates. So you are still growing at the kindergarten level, but the young families are not having the kids as early as previous generations. That's the slowdown in that kindergarten growth. With this new projection, we are forecasting that within 5 years you could add about 2,713 students. That'll put your enrollment in 2022 at about 12,915. So this is an increase from our previous projections. You know, a year ago we were thinking that your annual start rate was going to be in that 500 to 600 homes per year. Now we're seeing that jump up to about 800. So therefore we've raised the projections, because we believe that you now can maintain about 800 or so new homes per year, thus pushing that up to that 500 per year kind of growth rate. What this looks like at the campus level, this is based on your current elementary attendance zones and your current configuration. So we do know that, you know, we're going to be, in the near future, you're going to be changing grade configurations starting in 2019. So in some regard, these numbers are going to look significantly different in terms of the breakdown of the numbers, because the grade configuration is going to change. So Ray and Smith will become intermediate schools, and then we will serve the K-4 or pre-K through 4 with the remaining campuses, and we're going to be working out the details with the administration on that starting shortly. But under this current configuration, you can see that next year we would have 3 elementary schools that will be over 700 students in enrollment. Henderson will be just over 700 at 701, Ray will be at 712, and Smith will be at 772. Of course, the grade configuration change will kick in, but beyond that, you can see we'll have about 6,600 elementary students starting in 2021. At the secondary level, we've got Brown Middle School, which will have about 1,248 students in 2022, and then Warren Middle School would have right at 845. Your high schools, North Forney High School is growing a little faster. That's primarily because we're growing, our housing is a little stronger north of the freeway. So north of 80, it's growing a little faster than it is south of 80. Also, you've got 5 elementaries in the north and 4 elementaries in the south. So there's a little bit difference in percentages of students in the north and in the south. I'll summarize and go back and answer questions. We're very fortunate in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Specifically, Kaufman County's unemployment rate is below 4%, so we have a very healthy economy in the Kaufman County area. Forney has 2 major mixed-use developments underway with retail and commercial growth. Roughly 36% of the district's Home sales were for new homes. The district is on pace to have about 700 new home closings in 2017. I think we're on pace to that jumping up over 800 in 2018. So in 2018, it's going to jump up to even over 800. Forney ISD can expect about 5 years of enrollment growth to be about 2,713. That'll put your enrollment in 2022 at 12,915. And in 10 years, your enrollment could be 15,570 students in the 2027 school year. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions by the board concerning the master plan or the demographic update at this point?
I have a question.
Mr. White?
Hey, John, what was our spring forecast for our snapshot total from this last year's projection to what we had snapshot last week?
It was 10,092 up to 2,095, I believe.
202.
Oh, he was asking what last year's snapshot was. Last year's projected count for this year was 10,092 or something like
The
that.
16 projection.
So it's about 108 kids different.
My memory is that you grew about 100 more than we forecasted.
Okay.
Ideally, we'd like it to be in that 20 to 30 range. We'd love it when you come a little bit over our forecast, but when it's 100 over, we would prefer it to be a little less than 100. Good news is, from a financial perspective, it puts you in a very positive position. But we also want to make sure that we are in the future making sure we're accounting for the growth that's going to be coming.
That's your question, Mike. Any other questions concerning the demographic update? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's all breathe a little. Well, that was a lot of information to take in and a lot of growth. I'm sure your anxiety and blood pressure has risen. So let's talk a little before we move forward, if that's okay. I put this slide back up very intentionally. And I want you to take a deep breath now, because you've already got measures in place as a board. Congratulations, to address some of these. All of the yellow that you see, although we're going to experience the yellow and the capacity extensions, I want you to remember the great plan that you've got in place from this summer, that we were about to add 900 seats. Okay, we're going to open up 900 seats in 2019-20, and you're doing that at a cost by converting to a 5-6 at half, literally half the cost per child of a new facility. So we're about to add in 900 seats that are going to alleviate a lot of this yellow, not to mention some of this conversion is going to allow for rezoning to help balance, okay? And a lot of this information is going to be provided to you in much more detail, obviously, next week when we have our workshop with talking about construction and some of those things. So it's a lot of growth, right? But you forecasted for that as a board and got great plans in place. And so just remember, we're about to subtract off 900 of those seats of yellow, if that makes sense. And we're going to make this look a whole lot better over the next few years. I do want to point out one thing that I need to make you aware of, and that is Smith Elementary School. The 772 is a little bit higher than the projections from last year than we expected. So we're probably going to have to come together as a board and district and make a few adjustments, even for the immediate of next year, to make it through one more before we convert. We've been working on that, and we're also going to bring a few ideas and solutions to you next week as well to address that 772. I don't think Mr. Hutchison would be real excited about opening the doors of 772 next year in the current configuration. So we've got some ideas to address that as well that we'd love to share with you next week. So just wanted to share a couple of things with you before we step out of the master planning, because we're going to really jump into that deep with the construction and the financial side of that, and how you're going to, what our FAs are saying when it comes to the conversions that are about to occur. We're right on track with all of our planning. The great thing is we're a year and a half out, still over a year and a half out before the doors open on the new 900 seats. And so from a construction standpoint, again, that'll come next week, and you'll hear some initial designs to give feedback on that we really think you're going to be excited about that will answer some of those questions. I want to really focus on the yellow tonight with you and just give you a little bit of information there that the conversion itself of the educational model is actually is what I lose more sleep over, honestly, even than the construction side of things. It's a very convoluted process that we want to make sure that we're getting all of our components and programs and all of those things in order. And so we've been working on that over the last few weeks to really begin to organize that as a system. And so we'll share some more of this information with you later, but we came together to do a leadership activity to bring in all perspectives the other day and ended up with really some great feedback from our team that really ended up with a conversion plan, a draft form that we'll bring to you in final form later. And I see you squinting, and that is very intentional. This is a draft, and it's a lot, but what we want to bring to your attention tonight is that we've got really developing about an 18-month plan of implementation, from everything from personnel to resources to furniture to attendance zones, and kind of which one needs to go first to support the others, and that's been the intent. We'd hate to get ahead of ourselves and have to backtrack after making some decisions as a school district. And so we will be talking to you over the next few months. In fact, most of this will begin officially. The planning process will begin in December when we meet with Bob and his team to start talking about programs and what the attendance zones may look like in the future. But there are a lot of moving parts to this I wanted to make you aware of. It's not, as you know, and pull the Band-Aid. So a lot of things to talk about from the conversion side of things, and we'll get this into more of a finalized draft for you. I'd like to open up any questions that you may have just over master planning in general, whether it be the demographer side of things and the growth or the conversion. Not a lot of just concrete detail right this minute on those things, but working on some of the finalized plans. But I do again want to reassure you that you've made great plans in the future to open up 900 seats at a very low cost per child, at about literally over 50%. By expanding the facilities instead of building new. So any questions that I may be able to answer for you before we move on from master planning?
Any questions concerning the master planning update?
I'd like to ask, I always seem to find the smallest thing, and it popped up at me where it said hire 5 to 6 principals, same thing for APs and counselors, and we're only opening 2 schools, or well, redoing 2 schools, converting.
Yep. Yes, ma'am. It was 5th and 6th grade principals. One of the things that we've discussed right now, it wouldn't be 5 to 6, but we've currently got our staff in place. We would obviously want to align our strengths of our leaders to the appropriate grade level. Some may have strengths in the upper grade levels versus lower. They may have an interest, more of a passion for one grade level. So our leadership teams, we are probably going to have a process in place to open up those opportunities to them and see who would be the best fit for that campus moving forward.
It seems rather early in the process also.
It is just a suggested draft. Like I said, that's one of the discussion items this fall, this spring, to talk about some of those leadership positions and make some of the changes. And it also, another option would be to wait into the next year. But a lot of decisions, as you saw, would have to be made that we would love to have our leaders in place to help us make those decisions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You want the person that's going to be leading that campus to have some say-so in the design process of all that. So that's why we put that so early in the development process.
When it comes to staffing, again, teacher-wise, we're actually going to become more efficient. However, there's going to be teachers that are going to need to transfer to different campuses because they want to stay with those 5th and 6th graders. And we definitely want our principals and leadership teams in place to bring their staffs on board if there are any changes. Good question.
So there's lots of decisions to be made in the near future.
Any other questions concerning the update? Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to item 10 is the consent agenda. Item A is the minutes of the October the 2nd, 2017 regular meeting. Item B is to approve a budget amendment. C is to approve the Eastfield College payment. D is to request for maximum class size waiver exemption. And E is to approve expedited state waivers. That's E1 is the early release waiver. E2 is a foreign exchange student waiver, and E3 is waivers related to students taking dual credit courses. The chair would entertain the consent agenda collectively or individually, whatever the board's pleasure.
Mr. President, I make a motion we approve them collectively.
Motion, Mr. Ferris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Green. I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 11 is considered agenda. Item A is consideration of possible approval of the 2018-19 and 2019-20 school calendar as the first reading. At this time, the chair to entertain Dr. Justin Terry, our Deputy Superintendent. Dr. Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Just wanted to kind of walk you through a little bit of an activity here, if that's okay, and show you some information, some data about the calendar that we're currently in. As you guys recall, we took a different approach this past year to our calendar, very innovative approach. So we really want to talk about tonight is how'd we do, and showed a lot of this information and discussed it with our District Improvement Committee over the last few weeks, and got their feedback as well. And so I wanted to show you this number here. Does anyone have any idea what this number might be?
The minutes for the next 2 years of education.
That's a great answer, the minutes. It's actually the number of views on the calendar video that we shared out. It actually went viral this year, 160,000 views. We made all 50 states. We were seen in 22 different countries with our school calendar, if you can believe that. It was that popular, which still amazes me. Now, we haven't got any of our other videos to run like that, but so a lot of interest. Still across the state of Texas, we receive phone calls on a weekly basis from other school districts interested in how we're doing things. We've got some people coming to talk to us actually over the next few weeks as well. We talk about innovation inside the box a lot here within the school district, and the idea and concept is that we have to work within the parameters of the box, but as we innovate and are successful within the box will transform itself. And I think we're seeing that our calendar actually made really a splash across the state of Texas, to the point of things are beginning to change and trends are beginning to occur within school districts. So let me just talk about a few highlights of the calendar that were a little bit different this year and give you some data and feedback. We want to keep an eye on this. And I'll preface by saying we are only about a little over a quarter into the calendar itself. And so Diamond Days were those days at the beginning of the school year where we began to put some trust in our teachers and give them time to do what they needed to do as a professional. We did a survey, and we had 194 responses to kind of help drive our decisions in the future on these professional development days. As you can see, it was very balanced across the district. We had feedback from all of our campuses. And we asked a very simple question along with a whole lot of other complicated questions, but the first one was, should we continue with Diamond Days? And 99% of those 194 respondents said absolutely yes, they loved it. We will use this data as well to kind of drive some of the changes and improvements we may be able to make in the future with our Diamond Days. Fall break itself, Judy, I employed one of our best researchers, Judy Weber, to kind of look into fall break and see, what was the research on fall break on the back end since we had that break, and what did it look like? And so I'm going to ask her to just kind of show you what we found is the absolute best research. I don't even know how to describe it, so I'll let you do
data.
it.
This is
great
qualitative data. Normally I'm looking at databases and looking at peer-reviewed, edited journals when I do research, but I did a little other type of research. And so I did look at social media. And one of my favorite things that someone put was fall break, good for the teacher's soul. And I thought that really spoke from what a lot of our teachers felt like they needed, the rest and the time. So time to rest, recharge, catch up. And then I started layering other things. Grateful to work at a school district that allows us to fall break. Someone just hung out with one of their own children. What a beautiful testimony. Love fall break, snorkeling in Key Largo. How fun. I need a fall break. Oh yeah, totally jealous. And so we started seeing other people who don't have fall break responding. And then here's some of our faculty and our administrators. There was Leslie Rader's kids are up there, and Katie Wilson. And then if you'll look at the one on the top right, do Terrell have this? And then there was at least a response. It wasn't profane, and it said, heck no. And then somebody else was visiting a relative, and then there's Dr. Luttrell. And so then Jenny Harsham posted with her beautiful little girls, and then look, Mama's daughter joined in with fall break equals pancakes. So we just started seeing lots of family time with our teachers and our staff members and our administrators, and there's nothing you can replace with the time people spend with their families. So a lot of positive results, and then our bands were able to go ahead and continue to practice that week, and then they've performed very well as they went into competition season, with one moving forward and the other one just so close, but they were able to practice in a relaxed time and have kids perform at their top. So social media really gave us a lot of interesting data.
So Forney Fall Break, if you search that on Facebook, that's the information you get. It's pretty exciting. We really couldn't find any negative to share. But I also wanted to share with you just some quantitative feedback and some current data. One of the things that we have heard from research on this balanced calendar approach is that it should improve, obviously, stress levels and anxiety, and I think you saw that through some of the family-oriented breaks that you saw during fall break. But it also should improve things like attendance, and specifically teacher attendance and student attendance. Significant data from student attendance we haven't seen just yet. We are improved from last year by about 0.1%. So we do see some improvement. We project that that should show even higher over the next few months between fall break and Thanksgiving, so we'll be bringing you more data later. However, I did want to show you some significant data. This is our teacher absentees over longitudinally from last year to this year for the first 9 weeks. As you can see, 2016 is in the blue, extremely big difference at every campus. 2016, those are the number of teacher absences that we had versus 2017, a much reduced number. If, as you are aware, we pay substitutes about $80 to $90 a day, which equated to about a $50,000 savings for us over the first 9 weeks. So pretty exciting. We shared all this data with the DEIC as well. What this resulted in really was we have a very, very unique opportunity that doesn't come along very often. I want to share some of that with you tonight. And the first one is the 2018-19 calendar that you see in front of you is actually an exact replica of this year. There is no change, actually zero change. Everything is in place from what you voted on the previous year, which is pretty exciting. However, we did receive one bit of feedback in the past that we wanted to address, and that is, I just wish I had more time to plan. Things like longer, a year out vacations, those types of things. We actually ran into a little situation by starting early where we had a teacher group that had already planned something we had to make adjustments for, and we accommodated. So what if we actually could look at this year, instead of adopting a one-year calendar, 2 years worth of calendar, and trying to stay 2 years ahead of our calendar planning. This also coincides with realignment that will occur this February for 2 more years. So this should help us get ahead of the game when it comes to athletics and UIL events. So what I'm also presenting to you is a second year's calendar, 1920. And this is, as Mr. Green was pointing out before we started the meeting, extremely, extremely rare because of leap year. We're able to actually have 3 straight years of no calendar change whatsoever. So the calendar that we're experiencing this year, we would have a replica of for 18-19 and 19-20. And so we talked about that with our DEIC, and as you can see, unanimous support for continuing with that. They're very excited about the work that they did. They do believe that they are making an impact with this calendar on more than just Forney ISD, and very excited about that, and like to see that continue so that we can track that data for over a 3-year period. So tonight I'm coming to you as a first reading with a a proposal for actually a 2-year calendar adoption this year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions concerning the 18-19, 19-20 school calendars as presented?
One question.
Yes, sir.
So it looks like you're adding a Diamond Day on the new proposal.
Should not be. I think
Last year,
there's
well, on
a,
17, it shows there were 4, and on the proposed one, it shows there's 5.
I think there's a misprint on the current calendar.
Okay.
So
And,
the 14th,
I'm not,
14th is not marked on the current calendar, but it was a Diamond Day.
So they got a full week.
yes, they had a full week.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Good question. We apologize for that.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
I assume bell schedules is a completely separate discussion. Any discussion about that changing for next year?
No, sir. We do not project. We actually have built in some excess time this year. If you'll recall, back in May, we had a challenge with the flooding over at North Forney, and the state has really recommended that we build in cushion into our schedule for things like flooding, hurricanes, ice days, those types of things. And so we did implement a 5-minute addition this year, when we do not see the need to do that in the future. I will say, may have some different discussion about times and things like that when it comes to converting to the 5th and 6th model. But when it comes to just a standardized calendar and bell schedule, shouldn't project any changes.
My other question was if they do anything in the next session that would impact our second-year calendar, like start date or minutes or anything, they seems to be a hot topic lately. Will we just modify that later?
Yes, sir. So this is common in some other school districts. They adopt this. I think Rockwall adopted a 3-year calendar a few years back, and then they changed over to the minutes and had to go back and adjust that. And so you as a board at any point in time can make adjustments to that calendar. Once we adopt, our policy does state also that Ms. McWilliams has the authority to make small adjustments once the board approves the calendar, so we can do that as well if we needed to move a professional development day or something like that. Yes, sir.
However, I would like to add, though, that when we talked with our attorney, there are a lot of school districts, the majority of the school districts in Texas are adopting a district of innovation mindset.
Over 600 now.
I believe it is over 600, yes. And so the feeling is that so many are adopting it that the legislatures may not go back and change that. We're hoping that they see that it's very popular, and I think that they'll get a lot of positive feedback on it. So we're thinking they won't change it. We're hoping they won't change it.
They'll take your money, but they'll let you keep your calendar.
And we do have just to remind you, 4 more years on our District of Innovation plan that you've adopted as a board, and that's written in there to exempt from that. So unless they rip the Band-Aid on the total District of Innovation approach, I think we're pretty safe for the next few years, according to Ms. Turner.
Any other questions concerning the proposed calendars? This is on the agenda as a first reading. Therefore, if it's a consensus of the board, it would actually be a consent item at the December meeting. So is there any issue about moving forward? That's our typical process policy. All right. So Judy, if you'll put this on our consent agenda for our December meeting, we'll actually consider and vote on the approval of these 2 calendars at that time. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Terry. Moving on to item 11B, consideration of possible approval of roofing consultants, Armco Industries. This time the chair would recognize Mr. John Chase, our CFO.
As the board's aware, we have included $1 million in our budget for this year to address some roofing needs at Claiborne Elementary primarily, but if there's any dollars left, we'd like to use those in other areas of concern that we have in the district. That in order to get the process started, we'd like to hire a roofing consultant that would act as our architect, engineer, and basically during the construction process they would be reviewing the project, making sure it was, you know, the percent complete when they're turning in the pay apps for us to pay the whichever roofer that we select to do the project. We recently met with Armco Industries, as the action item says, and discussed with them about entering into this roofing consultant contract. They are, as I said, a registered engineering architect firm. They specialize in roofing, waterproofing, and the building envelope for both existing and new construction. Just kind of the highlights of their qualifications. They have been in business for 34 years. They've worked in over 450 school districts, universities, junior colleges in the state of Texas. I've used them, just full disclosure, in the past when I worked at Crandall ISD, and also when I worked out in West Texas in Dimmitt ISD. They were the roofing consultants on some roofing projects I had going out there. So you know, I know the guys. They do good work, and you know, I trust them that they'll do us a good job here in this district as well. They have currently, I think their structure, they have 33 employees. If they combine their experience, it's over 400 years in the combined experience in the business. They do have a corporate location in Flower Mound, and then 3 other regional offices, one in Lubbock, El Paso, and McAllen. Just as far as the contract goes, one other point I would make is that the architect that we have on staff right now, Huckabee, and they've used Armco in the past to be a consultant on roofing projects they've been a part of. And also, I believe WRA has probably used them in the past as well. So they have a pretty good reputation in the business, and they do, you know, they just specialize in that roofing and building envelope portion of the building, and so they've got a lot of good value-added experience, in my opinion. And so, as far as the contract goes, there's a couple of stages in the contract. There's first, if we have them write a roof report where they go out and core certain sections of a roof and see, you know, is the insulation wet? You know, what kind of shape is the roofing membrane and that kind of thing and just give us an overall complete report on that roof and what they would recommend us doing to a roof specifically. That would be 4 cents a square foot. If we just utilize them for construction services, we just say, hey, we want you to do Claiborne Elementary, and that's it. It's 6% of the construction cost, and so whatever, you know, when we go out to bid, they'll help us design the bid specifications. We'll put it on the street for bid, and when we award the contract, we'll bring the resulting bids back to the board, of course, for approval. Then when that contract is awarded, whatever that award price is, it's 6% of that contract cost, and then they would be involved in the construction administration, just like any other construction manager would be in that particular during the process of re-roofing the school. So, if there's any questions, one thing I forgot to add is that we do have Doug Shearer tonight in the audience. He would be our point of contact with Armco in our projects. Doug has got 37 years of experience in roofing, and he's been with Armco for about 13 years. And so, you know, I've worked with him over in Crandall again, and I trust the advice they give him. Just one personal story over there. We had a building there, and some of these things that Armco will do, they won't charge us that 4% fee just to come out and just say, hey, you know, this is a problem or that's a problem. Or, you know, if they don't do a full-blown roof analysis, they're not going to charge us a fee. And again, they came out to the district. We had a problem with some new construction that we had, and when we got rainstorms, it was flooding the new construction in this section of our admin building. You know, we come into the building and had 3 inches of water, you know, up against the wall, and we kind of went back and forth with the architects trying to figure out what it was. Well, these guys came out there, you know, in I think a couple of hours. They identified what the problem was, and we got it fixed. We hadn't had a problem. At least I don't think they've had a problem with it since then. So, again, I would recommend that we award this contract, and so we can get moving on design the bid specifications and starting with our roof project. If you have any questions, I'm sure of me or Doug, either one of us, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, John. Any questions from the board concerning the proposed roofing consultant?
I've got a couple, Mr. Bell. this the only proposal that we solicited, or we?
It is.
It is.
It is. Based on qualifications, it's not like a regular bid process that you have to go through on that, but, I just felt like, I've used them in the projects in the past. Our maintenance director used them over in Plano. Our architects have used them for consultants. I just felt like that, that was probably good enough for me as far as, qualifications went.
Okay. And then this is for roofing only. Does Armco do other waterproofing consulting and design as well? Facade, windows, if those services are ever needed?
Yes. That's part of the overall building envelope, which is the exterior walls, windows, and those areas. If there's any issue with any leaking in those areas or whatever.
Yeah, and I know we've got one project in particular over Criswell right now. We've been, working with the glass company trying to figure out why water is coming into the building. They've been over there a couple times and still can't figure it out. And we may have Armco go over there and take a look at it and see if they can't figure out if it's coming off the roof somewhere to fix that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? John, I had a couple. What's the average size of a elementary school, 80 to 100,000 square feet?
It's about 75,000, I think is more like it.
Right.
It'd be about $3,000 for the report if we had to do it.
I was just extrapolating that out, so for about $3,000 to $4,000 per project. I mean, we're looking at Criswell Elementary, so the fee to design it's $3,000 to $4,000.
If we wanted them to write a full roof report analysis, that's correct. If we just said, we want this the project roof, we wouldn't be charged that. It'd just be 6% of the cost of the project.
My point was, it's not material. It's not very much money. Secondly, I noticed that the thermographic scanning is not included in the event you're looking for moisture. Do they charge by the hour or by the square foot, or they just give you a total lump sum price for that service?
It's a lump sum based on what the project is, and that's based on outsourcing to thermography, those kind of things. They have to be certified thermographers to go to do that infrared, those kind of things. We have certain level thermographers on staff, but to actually get to a military grade, if you will, depending on the quality of the level that you want to go to, it also depends on what the problem is.
Sure.
So we usually let that dictate us to us what we recommend as far as.
Okay, thank you.
Vary from project to project.
The last question I had was in the fee for the Schedule C, an event, they end up doing a report and put a scope of work together, you get competitive bids. If the roofer that you choose buys the materials that are actually specified, or not specified, but I would assume it's an or equal. So there's multiple vendors here. But if someone picks a material that's rep by Armco, they waive their 6% construction fee?
Yeah, that's correct.
So my question would be, are there multiple vendors specified besides the products you represent? Okay.
It's based on performance.
And I drilled them pretty good on that one. I wanted to make sure that we weren't boxing anybody out of the competition.
Well, I mean, I just want to make sure if you're going to waive 6% worth of fees, then you're making money selling a product, and I'm in the construction business. I mean, that's kind of a conflict, could get to be a conflict of interest.
Yes, sir.
And so I just wanted to and I'm fine as long as there's multiple vendors that can be chosen by a roofing contractor. And then too, when you go to qualify those bids, their 6% fee on top of whatever the bids are, depending on the product specified, is going to weigh into your choosing and your recommendations, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. That's all I've got. Sorry to be lengthy, just thorough.
I would, if there's no other questions, I would recommend that we award the contract as presented.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Ms. McWilliams, you have a recommendation?
Yes, sir. I'd like to recommend that the board approve the contract for roofing consultant services with Armco Industries as presented by the administration.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none at this time, the chair would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion, Mr. Green. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. White. I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chase. Moving on to item 12, there are, I think, a couple of employees to hire. Is there any reason anyone would want to go into executive session? If there's not, then we'll bypass item 12, executive session, move on into 13, possible action arising from the executive session, of which we didn't have, but item 13A is consideration of possible action regarding employment of professional contract personnel. Ms. McWilliams, you have a recommendation?
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask the board that they approve the contract recommendations.
Have a recommendation to approve the employment of professional contract personnel. Any questions? Hearing none, at this time, the chair to entertain a motion. Motion, Mr. Johnson, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Regan. I got a motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, call for vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item 14, announcements. Future board meetings, we will have a facilities workshop next Monday night, November 13th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. Our December, meeting will be on December the 4th at 6:30 p.m. And then our regular meeting for January will be Thursday, January the 11th, 2018 at 6:30 p.m. We will be on Thanksgiving break as a district, Monday, November the 20th to Friday, November the 24th. We will also have a annual Christmas open house for Forney ISD. That will be December the 21st, and I think that's 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. So put that on your calendar for December the 21st. Anything else to come in front of us? If not, it is 8:10 p.m. and we stand adjourned. Thank you.